Good morning, everyone. My name is Melody Morgan, and I'm with APSRC, Arkansas Public School Resource Center. And with me are some of my colleagues joining today as well. Gina, if you'll nod, let them know where you are in our storybook here. And Gina Williams was also with me from Teaching and Learning. And we have Trent Saracini helping us in the technology world this morning. He'll be doing some moderating and recording of our webinar this morning. So I welcome each of you to this great day. It's a beautiful sunshiny day up here in Northwest Arkansas. I don't know what it's doing there, but kind of glad that rain and storms behind us. So as I said, we're going to be recording this and pushing this back out and sharing the actual video, the presentation, and the form that I'm going to talk about later in this video. But just to kind of give a lead in, this is kind of like our third in a series about how APSRC is providing digital learning solutions for districts. And so one of the avenues that we kind of alluded to in the past two sessions was talking a little bit about advancing student learning and what we're doing in some of the ways in our teaching and learning division to do that. So today is to specifically address that summer academy that we have referenced and led into. And we're calling our academy the Pathway Summer Academy. And it is going to be ready to go for this summer. And we're going to get deep into this information as soon as I manage my screen a little bit better here. All right. So the program highlights of the Pathway Summer Academy. We're going to talk about 6 big key points today, and I'm going to try to make this a very focused and concise webinar for you, because I feel like you may have to go back and reference it with another possible member of a leadership team, or you may need to process it with some of the talent that you're going to think about. But anyway, having said that, we're going to talk about how it's an integrated model design. And it's very important that you hear that word integrated. We're going to go right into that in the next slide and explain what we mean by that. Key program features, the summer program outcome and incentives, timelines and commitments, academic coaching model, and resources and next steps. So when we talk about integrated model design, what does that mean? When I talk about integrated, that means there's at least 2 pieces that come together to make this work. It is a student-focused model, but it's incomplete without the supports that we're going to put in place in this model to grow the capacity of the adult educators in your system. So it's a partnership with our local school districts. Anybody can be a partner in this. You don't have to be a member of APSRC. You can have a partnership with us. These resources, the backbone of these resources, are made affordable through our state grant that we received this past year, as well as next year. So we have taken that and done a lot of refinement in our teaching and learning division to be able to provide you even more resources out of that we can scale and provide and deliver to you. So it's an integrated model in that it takes students and teachers, or students and educators, our students and leaders, in order for it to be an outcome that is lasting for you in your district. I call it a hybrid delivery and implementation model because it doesn't have to just be one way. This is a program that can fit your needs, whether or not you're going to do an on-site summer program with students, or if you can't get all your students to come and you still want to address the needs through a hybrid delivery. It's a program that we can actually implement with blended supports on-site and synchronous supports off-site. Now, what I mean by synchronous supports are basically if you think of it as the real-time intervention and instructional contact 2 times per week. That's the minimum that we're going to have in our model. So you be thinking in your mind, if you haven't thought of anything yet, like how can I take advantage of possibly some summertime to address unfinished learning? Here's an example of how you can do it. We're creating the program and the structures, and we're creating the mechanism to onboard your students, develop your staff, your leaders, so that can then go back and scale even more for you in your district this fall. It can meet the needs of the kids in the program in the summer. It can provide great compensation for your participating adult learners. There's a piece of this integrated model design that we want to talk to you about. We alluded to it in the last session, but we talk about a digital gap curriculum. And so I know that we have worked with some great practitioners in our state that have helped work and identify essential learning standards in English language arts and mathematics, specifically in the K-8 grades. So we have taken that work and we have worked with our partnership to develop digital content that's condensed and compressed and aligned for those standards. As I go through this, Trent, I want to say this because we don't have such an audience that's so large that we couldn't do this. Anybody that has a question throughout this as we go, have them take themselves off mute and we'll answer it right at the moment.
Okay, sounds good.
So the key program features that we're going to discuss about, we're talking about it as a program model for the summer academy, but it's also a program feature that you could apply then in the fall when students return to school. It focuses on essential learning targets. It incorporates data-driven strategies to personalize learning. And what do I mean by that? We're going to use MAP Reading Fluency Assessment Tool to actually personalize interventions for students and teach the academic leaders that you involve in the program from your district how to monitor student progress, how to personalize the intervention needs for each student. I need to point out that the MAP Reading Fluency Tool is a tool and component that NWA provides as one of the 4 assessment vendors that are approved on our state list of vendors. The state has also funded the K2 assessments in our state in the past, and they have expanded some digital opportunities through some grant resources to scale that through 3 through 8. So I know the licensing cost to be able to choose one of those 4 assessment vendors has grown, and it will go forward in next year where you do not have a cost to license those assessments. One of the suite of products that NWA offers is the MAP Reading Fluency Tool. It's an assessment tool. I want you to know that it is aligned with the RISE initiative in our state and the Science of Reading, and it actually assesses the big 5 components that are central to the science of reading. By using this tool and in the program, what we work with the academic coaches and leaders on, it'll help them learn to target skill development and literacy in math, and it'll help us address learning loss and make sure that we know and can recognize what it looks like for grade level readiness. So one of the big outcomes that I want to talk about is, of course, if we take advantage of the summer window of time, somewhere in there, we can actually provide some timely intervention for students that have identified learning gaps. So this is, in essence, a solution to address student learning loss. Whatever we want to call it, whether we want to call it learning loss, if we want to call it a learning gap, if we want to call it unfinished learning, it's simply taking advantage of a partnership that we already have with our state, partnerships with our districts that have a need to address this, using an extended school year concept and helping to bridge learning over the summer. The biggest thing I can emphasize to you that makes this an integrated model is it's going to grow local capacity through a coaching model. It provides compensation and development for local educators, so no one's expecting them to engage in this work without receiving compensation for it. And it awards professional learning credits to the academic adult learner coach, and it's a replicable model for scalability then in the fall. So let's talk about the program incentives. What does the compensation look like for local educators as coaches? It's $5,000 in compensation for 5 weeks. They receive professional development credits. They're going to have 2 on-site training sessions. One is outside the window of the summer program, and one is within the window. One of those 2 days is within the window of the training program. They're having access to the reading fluency assessment tools. There is an additional stipend, which we'll call performance pay for the coaches, based upon spring to fall student growth and outcomes. So these are measures that are locally generated, locally created measures simply by using the spring data from your 4 vendors that you're giving right now. You may have concluded that right now. And then you'll do it again in the fall. When the student returns to you in the fall, you'll assess them in the fall. Those are going to be our 2 data points for determining the growth piece. We'll get into those metrics if your district makes a decision to go with that deeper, but there will be a stipend based on outcomes. So it is driven by student outcomes, whether or not that coach gets the additional stipend. But regardless, the work and getting the development and the training and being able to actually lead a group of students in the summer academy, that's a compensation for 5 weeks of work. Think of it as $1,000 a week for the coach that'll be paid at the end of that time. So let's look specifically at that academic coaching model that we're describing that's so important in that integrated model. Some of the training topics that we will be developing your adult learner or your adult educator or teacher or leader or instructional facilitator, we're letting you make that decision as to who wants to be involved in the model, who has a desire to be involved, and who you determine that you can refer to be in that model. The topics that we're going to develop the academic coaches on: map reading fluency assessment tool that we've already discussed, data analysis and personalization, gap curriculum, scope and sequencing, instructional planning and delivery, RISE initiative and science of reading strategies, blended learning strategies, student engagement strategies, and then the one that we don't want to say out loud, digital skill development and more proficiency in using a learning management system. Or it can be a content management system. We're just trying to grow those skills. We realize that it wasn't the best environment to have to grow them last year. So we're going to expand on whatever skills they bring to the table to help them feel more comfortable in that world. So timelines and commitments. When does this Pathway Summer Academy program begin? It begins for students the Monday after the holiday weekend of July 4th. So it begins July 5th and it runs 5 consecutive weeks through August 6th. Students that will qualify for the program are going to actually go through an identification progress. I think I mentioned a little bit that the data points are going to come from your spring and then your future fall diagnostic assessments. So we're also going to use those same valid measures that are done in a standardized format in your schools to identify the students who have the greatest need to be in the program. So students identified will be using this spring diagnostic data that's being created right now. This is through like NWA, Renaissance Star Assessment, iReady, iStation, iReady with Curriculum Associates. Whoever you choose to use as a vendor, that is the data that you will use to qualify the placement of students. We're going to dig a little bit deeper in that in just a minute. The cost for each student to be in the program, the cost to you as a district is $200 per student. That's a tuition cost. That comes down to $40 a week to have intense opportunities to address unfinished learning in math and literacy with a qualified, skilled, and developed academic coach through a program. So $40 a week is going to get you that kind of a program, whether you want to run it on site, we'll talk about that in a minute, or whether you want to do it in a hybrid type way, blended learning way, with some synchronous connectivity and instruction. Just to talk a little bit about what that $200 student tuition cost funds, let me tell you what it funds. It funds the summer programming. It funds instructional supports. It funds academic coach compensation. That's how we pay coaches. It funds training and professional development. The Summer Academy to Address Student Learning Loss qualifies as an approved ESSER expenditure. So I know all of you have ESSER funds. So here is a way for you to address unfinished learning with students and figure out how to better grow some capacity in your district through your adult leaders. The requirement of adult learning coaches that you're going to recommend or refer by the district is one coach for every 50 students. This model has a little bit of flexibility in it, especially if you're doing it on site, on how you could schedule that logistically and accomplish that in a smaller setting. We do know that when you're doing things through a digital format, you can engage a little differently. No one expects them to engage at one time with 50 students, but there's going to be a method of that covered in the training where you might have an A block and a B block of kids that you group flexibly based upon their needs once you identify them as to who you're going to do some common interventions with at one point in time, and then pivot to another group at another. And that model can also work on site. It just depends on how much you want to go into that planning. I am a great logistical planner, and I welcome any opportunity to visit with you over the phone and come up with ideas. I'm a former state assessment director for you in Arkansas, and there's not many schedules that I haven't accomplished. And so I really would love that opportunity if that presents a challenge for you. The professional development and training that I want to talk to you about, it's going to require one professional development day in Little Rock at our training center, downtown Little Rock, at APSRC. We're still finalizing one of two dates for what that will look like. But it is prior to the academy starting. There is going to be a front loading all day face-to-face session. We're looking at Monday, June 21st or Monday, June 28th. We're just trying to nail that one down. If you have a true commitment, I want you to know there is a one-day training event for that. Then there's that second day of training that's a follow-up training in Little Rock as well, as an opportunity to learn how to use the data that gets created during that first week using Map Reading Fluency Assessment Tool. The academic coach training is on the use of the Map Reading Assessment Tool, instructional planning, like I mentioned earlier, and delivery of GAP curriculum. Coaching strategies will also be taught that are aligned to science of reading supports, blended learning, student engagement, and digital skill development. Districts that decide to commit and be part of this program, when they identify their students, they agree to share that data with us so that we have a data point. We have two sets of data. We have a set of data points where we can measure growth from, one from the spring and then one again in the fall. So I've created a folder of resources that I want to share with you, and it's a living folder. This is what is currently built out in this folder, and then there will be more information. I've just been very transparent so you can see what all is coming very quickly. There's a compensation schedule out there. There's a district participation form. There's a GAP curriculum example I want to show you. There's some implementation models that we can discuss. I'm sure I have forgotten, how to think through how this could work and be replicated in the school year, and also how to help you think through how you could replicate it in a summer setting if you want to do an on-site model. There's a summer budgeting tool to help you know exactly what are you looking at. And then there are student identification guidelines. So having said that, I'm going to scare you with my desktop probably. So all of you are going to have access to this link within the presentation. It's just in a Google Drive. That's it. It's just a publicly shared document in Google Drive. And I know that I can't say that I know exactly what you're going through because I have not been a building leader or district leader during a pandemic school year. But what I've tried to do is put everything together in one document, kind of like a roadmap, so that you then can find the roadmap and go from there to find any kind of resource that you need about completing the requirements, considering the requirements, and then actually committing yourself to being part of a summer academy program with us. So as you can see, the first link here that is linked is the academic coach adult learner compensation schedule. And I've put the link on the left and the description on the right. I think I will make this larger for myself and y'all there. And the description on the right, and basically it's just that. It is a compensation schedule for determining academic coach payments. So let's look at that. I'm going to have to make it large each time, it looks like. So the academic coach piece, this is a compensation schedule. It's very straightforward. I try to make things very simple. There will eventually, if you agree to be part of this program, need a legal agreement between the district and us in order to be able to secure that placement. And there will also be a memo of understanding between us and the coach that we're actually going to be compensating. But this is just a high level document to show you the compensation schedule. Academic coaches that are referred by the district, that's the important thing. Teachers and anybody else in your system cannot refer themselves. They can tell you they have an interest, but this is coming from a district leadership lens and district leadership initiation as to whether or not that coach is going to be involved in your program. So not anybody can just go sign themselves up for it. It'll have to come through you, through a form that I'm going to show you in just a minute. That individual that's referred will be contracted for a professional services contract with us using the following schedule. They'll get $5,000 for a 5-week summer academy program. Now I put this in there first. This is a key component in you being able to have a program. You have the funding, we know that. You have the need with the students, but you have to offer up the partnership and support of the adult learners so that we're not just fixing a group of children in a program, we're actually growing your adult learners to come back and scale that capacity in your district. We're trying to create a longer lasting effect in this model. They come out of it, they benefit individually from it as a professional, but you then benefit from it as an organization or a school system. The payment terms for professional services, it's a 5-week summer academy, so there's going to be a single payment, and that's going to be done through APSRC. You're not going to have to put that on anybody's bookkeeper, anything like that. I will collect all the necessary information based on who you refer and who wants to agree with us and be part of the program. I will collect it, do the W-9 make sure they get the W-9, and their compensation will be sent directly to them as a contract for professional services. There'll be one single payment for that. It will be done at the end of the summer program. So the summer program concludes on Friday, August 6th. So I'm saying that we know they're going to need to be paid, but we're going to wait till they do all the work before we pay them. So they would be able to expect payment for their work, their services the next week, the week of August 9th through the 13th. It'll be mailed to the contracted coach at whatever address they provide us on their W-9. And I just want them to know this because I was a business teacher, don't want anyone to be confused. Contract services is for miscellaneous income. So there's no taxes withheld, there's no contributions made. It's just like doing work on the side for contract, okay? Make sure they understand that. This is a big piece. This is the incentive that we don't often see. And I personally am motivated by an opportunity to show what I can do through students as outcomes. And so having said that, this would have motivated me as an educator of 26 years in our state. If I am really worthy of everything, of you referring me to be a coach for your students, and I'm going to put that kind of devotion, time, and commitment in that program, then when they assess those children in September at the district, then I believe that I'm going to see outcomes that last beyond the summer program into the fall. And so with that, if we're able to document that as an aggregate for the 50 students that that coach is serving, as a group of students, that measurable growth, regardless of which assessment they're using, then they'll be able to receive that $1,500 additional stipend on top of their $5,000 compensation. It will be a single payment. It'll be payable upon conclusion of the fall diagnostic testing. I talked to the State Department yesterday, and that window actually runs from, usually it starts right after Labor Day, and it runs through the first week of October. So as soon as all the students that are involved with them are tested, and we can actually get receipt of that data, so we can do that growth calculation on where was that student in the spring and where are they now in the fall, then we estimate that their stipend, if they have that measurable growth, can actually be sent to them the week of October 25th. Okay. Again, this is a paper check mailed for contract services. Okay. Okay. Any question about the compensation schedule?
I'll say the chat's been very quiet so far.
Yeah. I know. So as you see, the second document's not linked yet because the attorneys are reviewing it. This is the agreement and scope of work. It's pretty simple what I introduced to them. We'll see what it comes out, but it's basically a legal agreement between whoever you refer as a coach to be part of the program. So they know, I basically want them to know what's expected for them to get paid. That's it in a nutshell. You know, what is expected of on a daily basis, what's expected of you on a weekly basis, what's expected of you to do for an individual student, what's expected of you to be doing. When I talk about synchronous learning, what in the world does that mean? That means a slice of time on a set schedule, Tuesdays and Thursdays, say you're going to deliver a 40-minute lesson to half of your group of kids in math. And on the other day, on Thursday, you're going to deliver the lesson that's very targeted for their needs in mathematics. So, I mean, and I can tell you, I will show them that I know how to progress monitor coaches, and I'm going to teach them how they can progress monitor kids using system tools. That's something I can do. And so there will be an accountability component into the scope of work and whether or not it's happening. And it'll be done very soon into that work to make sure that we don't go off course for very long if we happen to do so as a coach. There's going to be really a lot of guidance to develop that adult leader so that it's effective for the students. So that will be shared soon, very soon. The district participation form, academic coach referral form, it's all in one. I'm going to show it to you. When you link on this, it's just going to bring up a famous Google form. Okay, and mine is pretty simple. There's no drop-down boxes. There's nothing to upload. I just need you to fill it out if you are interested in participating as a district. And this is also the same form that you can refer the academic coaches. I try to make it a one-stop place for you to give me information. So you need to have your information pretty much settled. It's going to require your email as a district person, the district name. You just type it in. Your answer here would be your name, your first and last name. Just give me that. That's all I need. Your role, if you're superintendent, if you're a curriculum administrator, if you're a federal programs, if you're, I can't think of anything else. Whatever role you have, I kind of need to know, because if it's not a role that I believe should have the permissions to be able to enter into an agreement with us like this, then I'm probably going to vet that higher. How many students do you estimate will be participating in the summer? I need to know that you understand this model. So like, if you're giving me 2 coaches, then your answer shouldn't say 500 students. See what I'm saying? It's one coach that you're providing in the models for yourself, and one coach can serve 50 students. And that's unique. It doesn't mean 50 in math and literacy. It's 50 total students for a coach. And then this last statement, it's meant to teach, provide direction, and yet get an answer. This is where I put participation in the summer academy requires the commitment of adult learners as coaches. Please provide the name or names of individuals you are referring for program participation. You will need to refer one adult learner for the academic coach role for every 50 students estimated to participate. Individuals would be adults that you currently or plan to employ by July 1 of this year. That means you may not have them yet, but you know they're coming. And it would need to be an employee, current or future, that expresses an interest in committing to the summer academy program work with us as a contracted service provider. So I'm letting you do all the backfill. We're creating the program, the model that we believe will deliver results for your students, but more importantly for your learning community, your school learning communities, by developing out the leadership capacity in your teachers, your instructional facilitators, your building principals. If you have a building principal that wants to do this, we have no set rule on that. I am assuming that if they work for you, they have gone through the proper background checks, or they wouldn't be eligible to do this work. I will put in all the safeguards, the agreements that I need to have in you to manage all the systems on our end, where you have none of that responsibility on your end. We will just teach your coaches how to be great academic coaches for the summer program and how to use the data. They won't have to master the systems.
Okay, Melody, I've got a quick question from Sally Bennett. She just wanted to clarify 50 students is the minimum in order to participate. Is that correct?
Miss Sally, it is. Since that covers the tuition of those students, covers the compensation of the coach and the other pieces that we wrap around in the program, that is the minimum. That's a really good question. K-8 minimum, how's that? Now we can be creative if we should need to and do a modified contract if you have a unique need of 25 students. I'm going to use nice math numbers, my third grade math skills here. We could figure out how that contract could be divided to scale backwards instead of forward. If you need that, we most certainly can. So that last question on that form that I showed you, I don't know if I ever said anything like that. This is where you're going to list the names of the people, provide the names of the individuals, and you can just put them, it's a long answer document piece here, so you can just separate them with a comma. I don't care. It's going to come into a form. It'll be fine. So this district MOU is the other legal piece being finalized right here. Memo of understanding for us in the district, and then of course the one with the coach. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the GAP curriculum. I'm just going to show you an example. It's the actual sample curriculum that we have done in partnership with one of our vendors to take the Arkansas Essential Learning Standards in Math and Literacy K-8, and then using the correlation documents and alignment pieces of both the state standards and national standards to actually pare that down and end up with a very concise curriculum. So the one I want to show you as an example of this naturally it doesn't open when I want to do it that way. Hang on. Maybe y'all can see it now. So here's an example of mathematics grade 1 curriculum. If you remember, the curriculum that we used this past year had 180 lessons. So what we've done, I'm going to go back and zoom in a little more for you. I know you can't read this. What we have done is we have identified the essential curriculum components based on DESI's playbook and targets and our essential learning standards of how we can take that requirement and make it fit into a 5-week block program. So you notice there's 25 days built of curriculum. That doesn't mean we're going to use every ounce and every learning object in this curriculum, but that does mean that we have now identified it, and we are then going to take that and help mold and carve out the most essential components for our students in our summer program. But this is a curriculum that's going to be available to all districts in our state for use. No one's telling you have to use it, but we're making it available, and I'm calling it a gap curriculum because it's not a complete school year curriculum. It's a curriculum that, if done and implemented correctly with students, it will help ensure that they are at least exposed and taught the essential learning targets to be successful for next school year. So for example, if I'm going into the 5th grade, well, let's just use this one. If I'm going into the 2nd grade in my district this fall, and you know, because you've assessed me this spring with your your diagnostic assessment piece, and you know that I am not on grade level. Mel is not on grade level at the end of 1st grade, especially in math, since this is one I have in front of me. So what are some things you can do? Well, you can identify information in the content that we're providing here in this summer program, and we can personalize what components of that curriculum we need to dive really deep into with that student. In this case, what does Melody, as a student who is not on grade level, need to have opportunities to learn over the summer or an extended school year or on site at your campus, so that I arrive at the 5th grade door this fall ready to be able to do 5th grade level content. I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, it feels like it is what we do, but I want you to know it's really that simple. And all I've tried to do with the partnerships that we have and the great team and talent that we have at APSRC is do what I can do, which is make things more efficient. You don't have time to build a curriculum or identify it. So what we're trying to do is put it out there so that if you want to use it, it's available. I'm going to zoom in really a little deeper and let you look a little bit at day 1 here.
Okay, Mel, while you're zooming in, another question came in from R. Burrows. He's asking the question, what will be the deadline for participation?
Well, as long as I have coaches and commitments and the paperwork done in time I have to invoice y'all. I mean, that's one of the things. I can't start the work and commit us to expenses that we're not going to be able to pay. So I would say probably no later than June 20th would be the absolute least amount of time I could probably turn that around, because there's actually a day in June that we'll need to take that coach and start developing them, or coaches, okay, and plan for that. So we're planning for on-site training, so that helps feed into that plan for us. But I realize that you don't have all those answers right now, and I realize you got a lot more going on than planning your summer program. But I would think June 20th would probably be the last time, and I need to put that on that form. That's a really good point. Deadline. I mean, I hate to put deadlines, but I'll put something on there, need by. So I'll let you look at this curriculum a little closer here. The scope and sequence has been identified on the content. This column here identifies the alignment with the Arkansas standard nomenclature itself, the reference of the standard, as well as a national standard. And then you'll notice there is a new labeling system that we have done to help us think through, oh, this isn't a full year piece. This is designed as a gap standard that we've identified for you to work with. So I don't want anyone to ever think this is a complete year. This is a way to bridge unfinished learning and focus it, is all it is. So I call it a gap curriculum. So you'll see that referenced here. And then over here, just so you know what it is, this is our standard description right out of our Arkansas standards. It's right over here to the right. It's a lot on that particular one. And then these are all, the learning objectives are listed right here. And these over here, they'll be in here. They're being populated as we speak. But this over here is the actual different type of curriculum objects available. And you do not have to have had any experience at all this past year in using any one of these resources for this to benefit you. We will take you if you're starting from scratch. You do not have to know how to use a learning management system. You do not know you don't have to have any prior training to be able to do this. We will help you with that. The read it is the objects that are what we would think of as the instructional piece of the lesson, the course. And these other pieces don't have to be done, but they're out there and they're available to support the instruction of that particular learning objective and standard. But I want you to know we have broken that all down: kindergarten through 8th grade, math and literacy. So we're going to have that available in print form, and we'll have it available in digital content form. So schools can actually pull that in. If they want to use it themselves for their own summer program, they can do it. That's enough on that one, probably. Okay. Implementation models. Let's talk about this. This is a resource for logistical on-site program implementation. That's a mouthful. So implementation models, this Pathway Summer Academy program, it can serve districts in either, like I said, a hybrid delivery model or on-site through a blended delivery model. And you don't have to know what all those words means. I just want you to know that if you don't have the capabilities of bringing your kids on campus, then there's a way to still serve them through this model that we assure you will look different than what your school year did, trying to grapple with how to engage students and whatnot. If you are a district, and this I'm not going to call anyone out here, but my eyes get open visiting with practitioners a lot. If you're a district that the word digital makes you cringe, or virtual, because you dealt with barriers that were much larger than content or will or skill, you dealt with connectivity issues, you dealt with access issues. I can't solve those for you with this program. So if you know that you have that limitation and that level of barrier, and you believe it's best to figure out how to get your students on campus, this model can serve that same group of students on campus and will still develop the coaches so that they then can impact the students. I'll help you think through the best model. I'm not saying there's a one size fits all, but let me give you an example. I'm processing with somebody the other day that wants to do an on-site. Hooray. I mean, I think that's the most awesome thing you could possibly do, is bring your kids back together for some interaction with each other and with adults and all that. If the coaching model is one coach for 50 kids, there's no way we want that to happen with a bunch of second graders. So what we would do is we would create like an A/B model, so to speak, where maybe, I'm just going to give this as a possibility, out of a 5-day work week, how much learning do we really want them to have to do in the summer on campus? And that might be they come 2 days a week. And it may be that they get dropped off, and it may be that you bus them. That's totally up to you. Either way, they get there with a predetermined start time and end time. And during that time, we'll divide that group in half. That model will group them based upon their needs. Because remember, all of these students are getting placed because they have demonstrated the lack of ability to be grade level proficient on an assessment. So they're going to have some common needs already. But some of them may be closer. They may only have moderate risk of not being ready for the next grade. Others may have tremendous risk of not being ready for the next grade. So we'll do what great teachers do, and we'll help that coach look at their data and actually adapt and create that flexible structure so that they can efficiently provide those common interventions on a personal level for a group of kids. So there's ways to think through that. So maybe Mondays and Wednesdays, I have one group come in for half a day. Then you feed them breakfast. They get immersed in all kinds of interventions together. They get exposure of great tools to be able to determine, hey, I have foundational skill deficits in reading and literacy, and I need to work on these. What are we going to do with those kids during that time? You can stand up that model and support it in any way you want, but you can know that that coach can do it on campus if we bring them in like an AB group model. And it could be a half a day thing and they go home, and then the next day the B group comes in. I wouldn't recommend they come in 5 days a week, but I would recommend some interaction at least 2 days a week in that situation if you're doing it on campus and can figure out how to do it. Even if one day, that's still better than no interaction. If they're able to do it at home and you do not have connectivity or device limitations, then that coach will be engaging in a routine schedule with group A and B students where they're delivering through virtual content delivery, like a Zoom session, where they all are in there with their 25 kids and they're going to deliver synchronous instruction to those kids. And that would be maybe on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock, I get my math instruction for 40 minutes and we have 10 minutes of group discussion. And then on Thursdays, I have my literacy. And then what do I do the other time? That's when I do some of that flipped classroom model where I've learned together in a group. And now I'm going to flip it. I'm going to do some work individually. The coaches will be taught how to progress monitor and check and constantly monitor for student engagement. They'll also be available to provide one-on-one assistance and tutoring to the students, and they'll have hours published for that. We are also going to have an opportunity during regular work hours to have any student call for technical help if they need it. Okay, so there's kind of thinking through. If we think about the fall year, how can this model be replicated for scalability then in the fall when students return to school using the customized GAP curriculum? We've touched on it a little bit. The digital GAP curriculum and learning management systems are currently part of the available no-cost resources that are secured for the state. They're secured with a digital grant for the whole state of Arkansas for any public school in the state. So there's no cost for that. So some of the models to just think about, and this is available in your resource folder, to address unfinished learning might include using this program in an after-school programming setting this fall. Using it for personalized intervention. If you have enough staff that you can identify 5 kids that need to work on these skills, then that might be a pull-out model for personalized intervention, or it might be elementary teachers do this so well, a grouping in a learning lab at the back of the room where we're working with one group of kids with an aide assisting in my classroom or an interventionist and addressing those that way, but using some of the resources that we're sharing out and developing in the coaches for that. You could use it like a block curriculum intervention rotation, like an extended block of time. So normally I'm just helping you think outside the box because we haven't been in the box all year. So we're outside the box. So thinking outside the box, we have to stay out there to think about how to meet the needs when we finally get our students back. So another example might be, we normally do reading for 40 minutes every day of the week. We might need to do reading longer going forward. So we might have an extended block of time where students that are at your door on grade level might do some enrichment activities while you then do unfinished learning with another group of kids. Whole group blended instruction, we might be in a situation where when we assess our students this fall, we find that 60% of them are not on grade level. So we might then need to just think about, what do we need to do for some common interventions for the majority of my students? And I put in there, the flipped classroom approach is where you give direct instruction and it moves from a group learning space to an individual then learning space. And that's where that tutoring and supports can come in after that.
All right, Mel, I have another question coming in from R. Burrows. He states, I understand there are training opportunities for participating coaches at the APSRC Little Rock locations. Is there a possibility of an implementation module training for district or building administrators.
You mean as a wraparound support? Can you ask that? Can he hear me?
I was going to say, Mr. Burrows, if you want to go ahead and unmute, he should be able to unmute and maybe clarify.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, what I was curious about, so it's not that coaches go get training to implement a model, but really so that school or district administrators are partners with them and we fully understand the approaches and the strategies that are taken. Not that the full training should be made available to district or building administrators, but really have an exchange of ideas among participating administrators for all the things that Melody is describing.
So I hear you saying, you tell me if I missed it. I hear you saying like, what can we do to scale that beyond the coach and provide the supports locally at the district and maybe networking opportunities real time through the program? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that plus having the opportunity, if we are excited about participating, to really ground ourselves before the program starts this summer and then into the school year.
Yes. Do you see that, Mr. Burrows, as being possibly done virtually like we're doing today to learn about it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes. I can't make any more Gina and Melodies right now as far as going to schools, even though we would absolutely love that, but we can definitely scale that need beyond the capacity that we've planned so that we can support the program better in your system. I would gladly do that.
Right. Thank you.
Would it be like an implementation webinar? So like next steps. So like if we are interested in doing this, can we have a general implementation webinar for what that may look like in my district and understand that that might need to occur in a common way, meaning your way may not match anybody else's way of how you're implementing it. I got you.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Burrows, one thing I want to point out, that's a really good question. Sometimes we can't allow ourselves to think differently as educators because it's uncomfortable. So sometimes when you're in a setting like that with others and you're hearing those great ideas, that'll spark other great thinking and ideas. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that that could be an excellent resource for anybody that is very interested in going forward with the program.
All right.
Thank you. So guys, I'm not trying to take up the whole day. I'm only got an hour for this, but I do want to show you this. We've covered the models, and you know, I don't want to put 90. I always dread someone that has 99 PowerPoint slides. So what I've tried to do is give a big picture set overview and a link of resources and go over some of the resources that are currently live and linked in very, very finite details with you. And record this so if people who didn't hear it have a chance, they can actually learn about it as well. This Pathway Summer Academy budgeting tool is specific for this program, the summer program. And I want to show you, it'll be available in the folder as well for you to manipulate. And it's really about making sure people understand. I put in here again, below are some sample. Let me scroll up. Below are example calculations for reference. This is just about the Summer Academy. This tool allows you to model your summer program data to determine the required number of academic coaches and tuition expenses. Tuition expenses cover summer programming, instructional supports, academic coach compensation, training and professional development, just keeping that in front of us. The Summer Academy to address student learning loss qualifies as an approved ESSER expenditure. So for example, if you were school A and you had 500 students that need to be in the program and elect to be in the program, you would need, and this will automatically calculate down on the cells that you're able to manipulate, but this will automatically require you to commit 10 adult learners, 1 academic coach for every 50 students, unless we have a one-off, Miss Sally, and work that one differently for you, where we divide it even smaller than 1 to 50, a half to 25. Tuition cost for the district is $200 per student. So this lets you think, okay, so what am I looking at? So down here, this is where you can go in and you can manipulate. I froze all the cells down through row 14, but you can actually put in your school name and play with the different numbers that you actually have. Make sure you understand the model of how many adult learners and the coaches that you're going to be developing in an integrated model with the students, and then what the tuition costs are. So I'll do this one. Let's just say you are example D and you only have 50 students. When you hit that, it's going to tell you need one coach, and this is what it's going to cost you in tuition. And I mean, they won't all be round numbers. I know that. Let's say your example, I'll clear this out in a minute for you. Example, you've got, I don't know, 87 students. So when you get a 1.74, you're going to need to give me 1.74 coaches, and I know that doesn't exist. So what we'll do is we'll take that, and I will then use that coach for other means. Miss Sally, this may help you think a little bit. When I get 2 coaches, I can't have a 1.7 person, so you're going to have to give me 2. And I'm going to develop 2, but I'm going to use that person. They're not going to get a lighter load, so to speak, and be compensated the same. They're still going to end up with 100 students. We're just going to allow them to have interactions across and be fluid as we need to fill in these adjustments as they come up. So I thought that might help you to see that. That's how, as a state, we can use our partnerships to leverage our needs a little bit better, but still develop our adults and benefit our students. Okay. I think I have one more thing in here. This one is coming. This would be if you decide to go forward, this is when you would actually have a data agreement with us. You're never just going to give me student information. We have data agreements with about 185 districts this year because we're pulling their data nightly into one roster and putting it in systems. And so if we don't have that on you, we need to establish that, and we can actually pull the data. You won't have to do it. You will not have to handle becoming proficient in a system to get enrollments in or get them in the MAP reading fluency system. I can do every bit of that with one piece of data, and I can pull it. You just have to help me identify the kids. You don't have to know the magic behind it, but that's something I can do and have done. Just so you know, I have a history of being able to do that part. So that's one less worry. The student identification guidelines, I thought this would be very helpful for you to see. This is a resource to determine student eligibility into the summer academy using local diagnostic assessments. So what I've done, I know I keep bringing the same thing up. This is needs to be larger so we can read it. They all look the same, but each one's a little different. So the student identification guidelines is going to be using your spring 2021 diagnostic assessment data. This is not ACT Aspire. Okay, I know you don't have that. I know you won't have that. This is your diagnostic assessment data with Curriculum Associates. If you use iReady assessments or iStation assessments or NWA MAP growth assessments or Renaissance Star, any of those options, we're going to let you use your data that you're already creating out of the requirement that you have. So there's benchmark and cut scores, and that's a requirement for all 4 vendors to be approved vendors for assessment in our state for diagnostic assessment. And so those resources have been linked out to the department's live binder resources. And I have just simply put the link there to help assist with report interpretation and scores for qualifying students. Notice there's a theme. Individual student performance below the 40th percentile qualifies a student to be in the summer program, okay? This does not mean they're on track for any specific level with ACT Aspire. I'm not doing that at all. These are all assessments that require to have some type of national norming piece in them. And that norm is if I cannot function as a student at the end of the school year at the 40th percentile or greater, then I have needs that need to be addressed. I have unfinished learning needs that are going to be challenges for me as a student as I go into the next school year. Okay. So you can qualify a student on either reading or math. It doesn't matter. They don't have to have needs in math and reading on the diagnostic data, because we all know how those feed with each other. So the student can be referred to the program with one score qualifying, and when they're in the program, they are going to get information and program delivery and content for both reading and math. There's not going to be like, I only need to be in there for math. It's a program to serve both pieces, okay? So let me give you an example of how this works. I'm trying to think. I'll look at Renaissance STAR assessment. So when you click on this, select this, it's going to bring up, you know, what I didn't want. Just a minute. I'm going to have to check my links evidently. The K2, I'm going to take you, I'll put a link in there, I hope, that will allow me to take you further. The K2 and 3.8 assessment piece, and then I go down here and pull in the different vendors. And I told you I was going to use Renaissance, but here are the 4 vendor names. This live binder is available publicly on the department's assessment website. And so understand I'm relying on that, but I learned to count on this as always being available. And so I'll make sure that link takes you into the individual tab and you don't have to navigate. But I'm going to go to Renaissance. And notice it's kind of like a tiered level approach. I start up here at the top, and then I picked Renaissance, and then woo, a new little dashboard appears for me. And so the reports and benchmark piece is right here that I'm going to talk to you about that you will use. I'm sure you already know how to use this, but I just want you to know where I'm finding it and the methods that we're using. Okay, so there's your report interpretation pieces. Percentile rank is on a report. It looks different for each assessment vendor, but I know you're familiar with your school reports, classroom level reports, student level reports. But the piece of data that you're interested in on that student, and in this case for Renaissance, is the percentile rank, and whether or not it's less than 40. It's that simple. Whether or not. You're going to have to know it and give it to me. You're not going to be able to just say, yeah, this student needs help, Mel. You're going to actually, when you provide the student name, we're going to actually have to validate that data point with a metric. So all I'm going to ask is, when we finally start collecting that on them, I have to have the percentile rank for that student that shows on whichever vendor you're using. Then again, we're going to need that in the fall, and we're going to determine whether or not we have some growth. Okay. I won't go too deep into that. The student parent agreement and the summer flyer are about done. My camera ready artwork needed a little help on that, but these are documents that if you make a decision to go into this, then you'll actually have communications already created to send home to the parents, where they have to understand the expectations of the program. You know, there's going to be a requirement for student engagement. I realize the parents may or may not be able to support much of that, but all stakeholders in that process need to know what they're signing on for, and kind of know what's going to be expected of them. And so I feel like a student parent agreement can work for all of us, and you can customize it with your logo at your district or whatever. But the language, we need some common language there for that agreement to work, especially when little Melody doesn't engage and coach has to reach out to me or reach out to my parents and remind me of what I agreed to up front, you know, that kind of stuff. So we need to have these, it's an expectation agreement. And then the flyer is just something you can use to promote this. It'll be camera ready artwork so that, excuse me, you'll be able to put it on your website if you want to, announcing this information. I just needed to have the artwork fine-tuned a little bit more before I share that. So they will be linked here, that one will probably be linked later today for you to use. It's just high-level overview about the program. Again, it may be something you want to make some adaptation to, especially if you're going to possibly consider doing it on site. So it's big level overview, but you may want to customize it a little bit and add the pieces about what's unique about your program yourself. So with that, I'm going to go back and see, I don't think I have any more slides. We've covered the schedule, the participation form, the GAP curriculum, the models you can think through, the budgeting tool, and the guidelines that are available right now. That's it. I just want to thank you for your time today and your interest and your commitment to serving students in our state, and let you know that we're here to partner with you if you want to, and we're here to help you through this next chapter and journey that we're going through in our state to address getting our kids back on track just as soon as possible. And so I appreciate each of you. Do we have any other questions, Trent?
Nothing coming in on the chat. Okay, well, I just said that. Here we go. From LaDonna Spain, she said, or is asking, could the district use their own LMS or CMS platforms that are currently in place for instruction to keep coaches from learning a new platform?
Well, I have good news and some bad news. Good news is the content is industry standard content. Even the GAP curriculum, LaDonna, is industry designed with that industry standard. So it's content that I know will function on the LMS that we're using. I would have to check to see whether or not it could be cartridged and used on the other. That is not part of our existing grant deliverables. Do you understand what I'm saying? For example, the K-12 courses from Lincoln are part of the grant deliverables, and making sure that they're able to be cartridged on a district's licensed LMS are. So that part is there, but as far as the GAP curriculum courses that we've built, that's something that APSRC took on, and I would have to make sure that that would even be an option, because that would require a one-on-one exchange between a vendor and a district. So I can't commit that. The difference in a learning management system, Gina's going to help me here, and a content management system, a CMS is what she's referring to, is that very thing. Digital content that's designed to work on a licensed LMS does not meet that requirement for a content management system. Correct, Gina? They're not interchangeable. So I can't take this course and just give it to you and it dance and do all the things that you want it to. It's not going to be interactive. The course is downloadable, the different pieces of the content. Like if you remember that scope and sequence that I showed for the Math 1, the read it, that learning object, it can be brought down and downloaded as PDF content, right, Gina? Some of it can be downloaded as Word. Some of the content is available to be downloaded as a Word download. And then, LaDonna, it can be input into a content management system easily. But the only part about it is all those bells and whistles that come with read it. Let's say I'm a first grader who needs audio supports in learning. That's not going to come with it. See what I'm saying? It's going to be, Gina, am I saying this right? One-dimensional content. It's going to be the object coming down, and it's going to lose that bell and whistle when you try to put it in Google Classroom.
That's right. And it loses all the interaction, the interactive pieces.
And that wasn't a deliverable of the grant. I want you to know it's not broken. It was designed to function in licensed LMS worlds, and it does. We had, this year we cartridged, I say we arranged for the coordination of digital content to be cartridged on the LMSs that schools had already invested in out there, but they were all licensed LMSs. And I think we had about 12 districts who had already invested time and resources in one, and it was able to be downloaded into their system and used that way the content was. So they did get access to the K-12 digital content that way. But the GAP curriculum is something that we have worked on ourselves this spring to be able to ensure it's designed and functioning for our summer needs. So I don't know that that deliverable, since it's outside the scope of the grant, I don't know that I can ask a vendor to do that piece. I sure enough can make it available to you in print form and PDF form. I can show you how to do that and how to access it that way, even if it's one person pulling it. Am I missing anything there, Gina?
No, I think you got it.
The good news as a follow-up to that question is skill transfer. And so it's kind of like, I mean, this may be a bad example, but it's kind of like when I go get a new iPhone, it's going to be different and I'm going to look funny. Or if I get a new car, I got a new car and it's got buttons, I don't know what to do. But what I'm saying is there's some associated learning that I have from a prior experience that I'm going to be able to transfer over and quickly adapt. And I will tell you, students are the most resilient end user I've ever seen. The adults sometimes a little slower to catch up and really more resistant to the change. But access to the free learning management system where this does all function is part of this. And we are very much prepared to take someone who's never engaged in it at all and bring them forward and be ready for it. So if they've got some associated skills that they have used with another LMS or content management system, they'll be able to make a transfer. If the will's there, Gina and I can get the skill there, right, Gina? We can do that. They just have to have the will to do it.
That's right.
All right, guys. I went over a little bit. I do appreciate all your time, and we will push out this recording presentation and link to the Google participation form with a little suggested date that it's due by in it right after Trent gets it all built. So we appreciate each of you. Please feel free to share it with anyone and let anyone know there's a lot going on that would have kept someone from being part. Let anyone know that this exists as an opportunity and have them reach out if they have any questions. I've got my contact name, email, and phone on here. So